The Zephyrian hegemony had made one critical mistake. They thought they understood human technology because they had observed Earth from a distance for months before attacking. What they saw were simple metal ships with basic weapons and standard energy shields. They had no idea that humans were very good at hiding their best secrets. General Pete Collins stood in the command center buried deep under the Rocky Mountains. Around him, dozens of technicians worked at computer stations that showed the positions of every human and alien ship in the solar system. On his orders, they activated Project Mongoose. To the aliens, the asteroid belt looked normal. Thousands of rocks floating in space with a few mining stations scattered among them. The hegemony sensors detected some human industrial activity, but nothing that seemed dangerous. They were completely wrong. Each mining station was actually a weapons platform. Hidden inside what looked like simple ore processing equipment were kinetic accelerators that could launch projectiles at incredible speeds. The asteroids themselves had been hollowed out and filled with guided missiles. What appeared to be a peaceful mining operation was really a massive trap waiting to spring Dr. Susan. Mills worked in her laboratory on the moon. Her team had spent 15 years developing something the aliens had never seen before. Every other species the hegemony had conquered used predictable military tactics. Their own computers could calculate enemy movements and plan counterattacks easily. Human artificial intelligence was different. It could learn and adapt during battle. It could make sudden changes that confused enemy computers. Most importantly, it could coordinate thousands of different weapons and ships at the same time without getting mixed up. Captain Amy Chen received her orders while hiding behind one of Saturn's moons. Her stealth ships were invisible to hegemony sensors because they used technology that the aliens did not understand. Instead of trying to hide heat and energy signatures, the human ships actually absorbed them and stored the energy in special batteries. Her squadron of 20 ships was small compared to the massive alien fleet, but they had advantages that the hegemony could not detect. They were fast and quiet. They could strike without warning and disappear before the aliens could shoot back. Engineer Tony Garcia had been working on the solar defense grid for 10 years. To anyone watching from space, it looked like a network of solar power collectors gathering energy from the sun. The aliens had scanned the system carefully and decided the structures were harmless. They could not have been more wrong. Each platform could focus and direct solar energy into devastating beam weapons. The entire network could work together to create energy blasts more powerful than any weapon the aliens had ever faced. The best part was that the sun provided unlimited ammunition. When the 72-hour deadline expired, the hegemony fleet moved into attack position above Earth. Warlord Zethkar commanded the invasion from his flagship Eternal Dominion. He had conquered 17 star systems using the same simple plan. Appear in overwhelming force, demand surrender, destroy anyone who refused. His tactical officers reported that Earth's defenses looked weak. A few hundred small ships and some orbital platforms, nothing that could seriously threaten the hegemony fleet. Zethkar gave the order to begin the bombardment. Plasma beams that could melt mountains struck Earth's major cities: New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow. The alien weapons hit their targets exactly, but something impossible happened. The energy beams bounced off invisible shields and scattered harmlessly into space. Admiral Carter watched from her command bunker as the alien attack failed completely. Earth's shield generators were hidden deep underground and powered by the planet's own magnetic field. The aliens could fire all day and never break through. Now it was time for the surprise. On her signal, Project Mongoose activated. Thousands of hidden weapons emerged from the asteroid belt and opened fire. Kinetic projectiles moving at tremendous speed slammed into the alien fleet. Guided missiles appeared from nowhere and struck hegemony ships before they could react. Captain Danny Rodriguez commanded the ENS Defiance. His ship, along with 50 others, had been hiding inside Earth's moon in specially built caverns. When the fighting started, they burst out of concealment and attacked the alien fleet from behind. The human ships were much smaller than the hegemony vessels, but they were also much faster. They could dodge the big alien guns and strike at weak points in the enemy hulls. Their weapons might not be as powerful, but they were accurate and could hit the same spot over and over until the armor failed. Dr. Patricia Lopez had discovered something very important about alien technology. The hegemony used the same basic designs for all their ships and weapons. Every vessel in their fleet had identical computer systems and identical weaknesses. Lieutenant Colonel Steve Murphy used this information to launch a cyber attack, unlike anything the aliens had ever experienced. Human computer viruses spread through the hegemony network like wildfire. Alien weapons stopped working. Navigation systems failed. Communications went dead. The breakthrough came when Sergeant Kelly Williams successfully hacked into a hegemony command ship. For the first time, humans could listen to alien military communications and understand their battle plans before they happened. Commander Zethkar found his perfect war machine falling apart. His ships were under attack from weapons that appeared out of nowhere. His computers were infected with viruses that made his weapons fire at his own fleet. His communication system was telling him things that could not possibly be true. The reports coming in made no sense. Human ships were moving faster than his sensors said was possible. Human weapons were more accurate than his computers calculated. Human defenses were stronger than his intelligence had predicted. For the first time in his military career, Zethkar was facing an enemy that refused to follow the rules. Every other species had fought the way he expected them to fight. They built big ships and tried to match his firepower. When that failed, they surrendered or died. Humans were doing something completely different. They were fighting like no other species in the galaxy. They used tricks and deception. They attacked from unexpected directions. They turned the aliens' own technology against them. Admiral Carter coordinated the battle from her command center, using information that flowed in from thousands of sources. Her artificial intelligence systems processed data faster than any biological mind could handle. They predicted enemy movements and suggested counterattacks in real time. The tide was turning. Human losses were much lighter than expected while hegemony casualties were mounting. Several alien ships had already been destroyed, and many others were damaged and unable to fight effectively. Captain Mike Thompson commanded a group of disguised cargo ships that looked like harmless supply vessels. When they got close enough to the alien formation, they revealed their true nature. Each ship released thousands of small guided projectiles that swarmed over the hegemony fleet like angry bees. The battle that was supposed to end in hours with human surrender was still raging after 12 hours of continuous fighting. Zethkar realized he was facing something he had never encountered before, an enemy that got stronger the longer the fight continued. Warlord Zethkar had conquered more worlds than he could count. His tactical computers contained battle plans that had defeated every type of enemy the galaxy had to offer. But nothing in his vast database could explain what was happening at Earth. Human resistance should have collapsed within the first hour. Every other species had either surrendered immediately or been crushed by overwhelming firepower. Instead, the humans seemed to be getting stronger with each passing hour. Captain Danny Rodriguez led his squadron in another attack run against the alien flagship. His ships moved in patterns that the hegemony computers could not predict. They would appear from one direction, then suddenly change course and attack from somewhere else entirely. The Defiance took several hits from alien plasma cannons, but her armor held. Human shield technology was not as advanced as the aliens, but it was much more flexible. Instead of trying to stop every attack, the shields redirected energy around the ship's hull. Dr. Patricia Lopez worked frantically in her laboratory, analyzing pieces of alien technology that had been recovered from damaged hegemony ships. What she discovered changed everything about how humans understood their enemy. The Zephyrian hegemony had built their entire military around the concept of standardization. Every ship used identical weapon systems. Every computer ran the same software. Every tactical program followed the same basic patterns. This approach had worked perfectly for conquering primitive civilizations. It allowed the hegemony to build and maintain a massive fleet with minimal effort. Repairs were simple because every part was interchangeable. Training was easy because every system worked the same way, but standardization had created a fatal weakness. If humans could find a way to exploit one hegemony system, they could exploit them all. Lieutenant Colonel Steve Murphy and his cyber warfare team had been busy. They had created computer viruses specifically designed to attack hegemony networks. These programs spread from ship to ship through the aliens' own communication systems. The viruses were subtle at first. They caused small malfunctions that could be dismissed as normal equipment failures. Targeting systems became slightly less accurate. Navigation computers developed minor errors. Communication delays increased by a few seconds. As the battle continued, the problems got worse. Alien gunners found their weapons firing at empty space. Pilots discovered their ships turning in the wrong direction. Commanders received orders that made no tactical sense. Sergeant Kelly Williams had established a permanent link into the hegemony command network. She could read their tactical plans as they were being made and pass the information to Admiral Carter in real time. The aliens were planning to concentrate their remaining ships into a tight formation and make one final push toward Earth. They would sacrifice half their fleet if necessary to break through human defenses and destroy the planet's surface. Admiral Carter smiled when she heard this plan. The aliens were about to make exactly the mistake she had been hoping for. She activated the solar defense grid. Engineer Tony Garcia had been waiting for this moment for years. All across the inner solar system, hidden platforms turned toward the sun and began collecting energy. The process took 20 minutes. During that time, human ships conducted hit-and-run attacks to keep the aliens busy. Captain Amy Chen's stealth squadron struck at the edges of the hegemony formation, while Captain Thompson's disguised cargo ships released more swarms of guided projectiles. When the solar defense grid reached full power, it unleashed a coordinated attack unlike anything ever seen in space warfare. Dozens of focused energy beams struck the alien fleet simultaneously. Each beam carried the concentrated power of a star. Hegemony shields that had been designed to stop conventional weapons simply evaporated. Alien armor that could withstand plasma cannons melted like ice in a furnace. 5 massive hegemony ships were destroyed in the first 10 seconds. Commander Zethkar watched in disbelief as his supposedly invincible fleet was torn apart by weapons that his sensors had dismissed as harmless solar collectors. How had the humans hidden such devastating firepower in plain sight? But the real shock came from the communication intercepts. Sergeant Williams was not just reading hegemony tactical plans. She had gained access to their strategic communication network. For the first time, humans could see the true scope of the alien empire. Dr. Rachel Green worked with a team of linguists and psychologists to analyze the intercepted messages. What they found was startling. The Zephyrian hegemony was not as unified as it appeared. Many of the conquered species were held in line by fear rather than loyalty. Rebellions broke out regularly and were crushed with brutal force. The hegemony maintained control through terror and the promise of swift punishment for any resistance. More importantly, the news of human resistance was already spreading throughout the alien empire. Other conquered worlds were hearing reports that someone had finally stood up to the hegemony and survived. Captain Nathan Scott commanded the reconnaissance ship ENS Explorer. His mission was to monitor the edges of the solar system and watch for additional alien reinforcements. What he discovered instead was even more significant. Hegemony supply lines were under attack throughout their territory. Species that had been enslaved for decades were suddenly remembering how to fight. They were using human tactics learned from intercepted communications to strike at alien weaknesses. On the distant world of Kepler Prime, the insectoid hive collective had risen in revolt. They used swarm tactics similar to human missile attacks to overwhelm hegemony defenses. The aquatic peoples of Oceanus 7 had flooded their own cities rather than let the aliens control them. They fought from underwater bases that hegemony scanners could not detect. Even the peaceful plant-based civilization on Garden World had joined the rebellion. They used biological weapons that could corrupt alien technology and turn hegemony ships into floating gardens. The effect on alien morale was devastating. Hegemony commanders who had never experienced serious resistance suddenly found themselves fighting wars on dozens of fronts simultaneously. Warlord Zethkar received increasingly desperate messages from across his empire. His governors were demanding reinforcements to deal with uprisings. His admirals were reporting massive losses to unconventional tactics they did not understand. The human battle plan was working better than Admiral Carter had dared hope. Earth was not just defending itself. It had become the spark that ignited rebellion throughout the galaxy. But Zethkar was not finished. He still had enough ships to destroy Earth, even if it meant the collapse of his entire empire. The thought of admitting defeat to a species the hegemony considered primitive was unbearable. He made a decision that would either restore hegemony dominance or end their reign forever. Every remaining ship would converge on Earth for one final assault. They would either crush human resistance completely or die in the attempt. The message went out across the hegemony fleet. All ships were to ignore damage and low fuel. All captains were to prepare for a suicide attack if necessary. The aliens would ram their ships into Earth's surface rather than retreat in defeat. Admiral Carter detected the change in alien tactics immediately. Her artificial intelligence systems calculated that the concentrated attack would overwhelm Earth's remaining defenses. Too many alien ships would get through. It was time to reveal humanity's final secret weapon. The alarm bells rang across every military base on Earth. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense Force flagship ENS Liberty and watched the screens with growing fear. 3 massive shapes had appeared at the edge of the solar system. They were moving toward Earth with slow but steady purpose. Admiral Lisa Carter walked up beside him. She was an old soldier who had fought in many wars. Her gray hair was pulled back tight and her face showed the lines of someone who had seen too much death. She studied the readings on the screen and shook her head. "How big are they?" she asked Lieutenant Ben Hayes, who sat at the sensor station. His young face was pale as he read the numbers twice to make sure they were right. "Each ship is about 800 kilometers long," he said in a quiet voice. "They are bigger than anything we have ever built. Much bigger." Admiral Carter had seen many enemy ships in her long career, but nothing like this. The largest human ship was only 10 kilometers long. These alien vessels were like moving cities made of metal and death. On Earth, the emergency meeting was already starting. President Nicole Barnes sat at the head of the table in the Situation Room deep under the White House. Around her were the best military minds and scientists that Earth had to offer. Dr. Marcus Webb was there too. He was the planet's top expert on alien life, even though no one had ever seen real aliens before today. The message came at exactly noon Earth time. It was broadcast on every frequency and in perfect English. The voice was cold and without emotion, like a machine reading a grocery list. "We are the Zephyrian hegemony. Your species will submit to our rule or be eliminated. You have 72 hours to surrender without conditions. This is not a request." The room fell silent. President Barnes looked around the table at the faces of her advisors. Some looked scared. Others looked angry. A few just looked tired, like they had been expecting this day for a long time. "What do we know about them?" she asked Dr. Webb. The scientist pulled up files on his tablet. His hands shook slightly as he read. "Not much, but what we do know is bad. Captain Ryan Foster of the deep spaceship ENS Falcon sent back reports from the Centauri system 3 months ago. The colonies there are gone. Completely gone. The planets are just balls of melted rock now. Captain Foster had been on a routine supply mission when he saw the attack. 3 ships just like the ones approaching Earth had appeared over the Centauri colonies. They fired some kind of plasma weapons that turned the surface of 2 planets into liquid fire. Millions of people died in minutes. Foster barely escaped to bring the news back to Earth. "How many star systems have they conquered?" asked General Pete Collins. He was in charge of Earth's defenses and needed to know what they were facing. 17 that we know of," Dr. Webb replied. "Maybe more. They have been expanding for at least 10 years. Every species they meet has 2 choices. Give up completely or die." Admiral Carter had been listening quietly. Now she spoke up. "Has anyone ever fought them and won?" "No," said Dr. Webb. "Not once. Most species surrender as soon as they see the size of the hegemony fleet. The few who tried to fight were destroyed in less than a week." The discussion went on for hours. Earth had good weapons and skilled soldiers, but the numbers did not look good. The human fleet had maybe 200 ships total. The aliens had thousands. Human weapons were strong, but alien weapons seemed much stronger. Human shields were the best technology could make, but they had never been tested against plasma beams that could melt planets. As the meeting broke up, President Barnes made the hardest decision of her life. Earth would not surrender. Humanity would fight even if it meant the end of everything. The news spread across the planet in minutes. Some people panicked and tried to find places to hide. Others got angry and demanded that the military do something. Many just went about their daily lives because there was nothing else they could do. In space, Admiral Carter began moving the human fleet into defensive positions. Every ship that could fight was called back to Earth. Even the old training vessels and cargo ships were loaded with whatever weapons they could carry. Captain Amy Chen commanded a small group of stealth ships. Her vessels were designed to hide from enemy sensors and strike without warning. She positioned her ships around the outer planets where they could not be seen. Engineer Tony Garcia worked day and night to bring Earth's orbital defense platforms online. These huge structures had been built over many years to protect the planet from asteroids and space debris. Now they would face their first real test. Dr. Susan Mills ran the computer systems that would coordinate Earth's defense. Her artificial intelligence programs were the most advanced ever created. They could think and learn faster than any human mind. She hoped they would be fast enough to keep up with alien technology. The 72-hour deadline was counting down. People around the world watched the news and waited. Children asked their parents if the monsters from space would really come. Parents tried to be brave and give answers they did not have. Captain Ryan Foster volunteered to take his ship out to meet the aliens. He wanted to try talking to them one more time. Maybe there was something Earth could offer besides total surrender. Maybe they could find a peaceful solution. Admiral Carter approved the mission even though she knew it would probably fail. Foster took the ENS Falcon out beyond the orbit of Neptune. He sent a message to the alien fleet asking for a chance to negotiate. The answer came back in the form of a plasma beam that barely missed his ship. Foster got the message and ran back toward Earth as fast as his engines could push him. The aliens were coming and they were not interested in talking. Earth had less than 24 hours before the shooting started. Admiral Carter sent out her final orders to the fleet. Every human ship would fight to the last breath. They might lose, but they would make the aliens pay for every mile of space. In her private cabin, Admiral Carter looked out at the stars and wondered if this would be humanity's last night among them. Tomorrow would bring the greatest battle in human history. She just hoped it would not be the last. The final secret of human military planning was not a weapon, or a ship, or a piece of technology. It was something much simpler and much more dangerous to the hegemony. It was an idea. Captain Jennifer Cole piloted the experimental stealth ship ENS Shadow through the chaos of the battle zone. Her vessel was so advanced that it barely registered on human sensors, let alone alien ones. She had volunteered for the most important mission of the war. Her target was not the destruction of the hegemony flagship. Destroying one ship would not end the war. Instead, she carried something that could destroy the entire alien empire from within. Dr. Marcus Webb had worked with communication specialists to create a message that would be broadcast throughout the hegemony network. The message was simple but revolutionary. It explained that the Zephyrian hegemony could be defeated. It showed other species exactly how humans had done it. The shadow slipped through the alien formation like a ghost. Hegemony sensors detected nothing more dangerous than a piece of space debris. Captain Cole brought her ship alongside the massive alien flagship and prepared to dock. Meanwhile, the battle around Earth continued to rage. The aliens had gathered their remaining ships into a tight formation and were pushing toward the planet with desperate determination. They were taking heavy losses but still had enough vessels to break through. Captain Mike Thompson had modified his cargo ships one more time. Instead of carrying weapons, they now carried something much more valuable. Each ship held thousands of small communication beacons that could broadcast messages across interstellar distances. When the cargo ships were destroyed by alien fire, the beacons scattered throughout space. They began transmitting immediately. The human message of resistance spread in all directions at light speed. Warlord Zethkar was so focused on the assault against Earth that he did not notice Captain Cole's infiltration of his flagship until it was too late. By the time hegemony security detected the human intruder, she had already connected her equipment to their main communication array. The message that went out was heard by billions of beings across 17 star systems. It was broadcast in every language the hegemony had ever encountered. The words were simple enough for any species to understand. This is Earth calling all enslaved worlds. The hegemony can be beaten. We have proven it. You do not have to live in fear anymore. Fight back. Use their own technology against them. Help is coming. The effect was immediate and catastrophic for the alien empire. Rebellions that had been smoldering for years suddenly exploded into open warfare. Species that had never communicated before began coordinating their attacks. On the mining world of Pharaoh 6, the humanoid workers seized control of the orbital factories. They began building weapons instead of consumer goods. Within hours, they had a fleet of improvised warships attacking the hegemony garrison. The crystalline beings of Silicon Valley had learned from human computer viruses. They created their own version that could spread through hegemony networks and cause alien ships to attack each other. Most devastating of all was the response from the Centauri system. Captain Ryan Foster had thought all life there was extinct, but he was wrong. Deep underground communities had survived the hegemony bombardment. They had been preparing for revenge ever since. The Centauri survivors emerged from their hiding places with weapons designed specifically to destroy hegemony ships. They had spent months studying alien wreckage and learning weaknesses. Their first attack disabled an entire hegemony patrol squadron. Commander Nathan Scott monitored the rebellion from his position at the edge of the solar system. His sensors detected hegemony ships throughout their territory, turning against each other. The alien chain of command was breaking down as local commanders lost contact with their superiors. Some hegemony captains tried to negotiate with the rebels. Others attempted to flee to neutral space. A few chose to fight to the death rather than surrender. But most simply abandoned their posts and disappeared into the vastness of space. The rebellion spread faster than the hegemony could respond. Their military had been designed to crush isolated uprisings one at a time. They had no experience dealing with coordinated resistance across multiple star systems simultaneously. Warlord Zethkar received the devastating reports in his command center aboard the Eternal Dominion. 17 star systems in full revolt. Hundreds of ships destroyed or captured. Thousands of installations under rebel control. His empire was collapsing and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Even if he defeated Earth, the rest of his territory would be lost. The humans had not just won a battle. They had started a revolution that would destroy everything the hegemony had built. But Zethkar was not the type of leader who accepted defeat gracefully. If he could not save his empire, he would at least have revenge against the species that had destroyed it. He gave the order that would define his legacy. The Eternal Dominion would make a direct assault on Earth. Every weapon on the massive ship would fire simultaneously. The planet would be reduced to radioactive ash even if it cost him his life. The alien flagship broke away from the main formation and accelerated toward Earth. Its engines glowed with overcharged energy as Zethkar pushed them beyond their design limits. The ship's weapons began charging for a final devastating bombardment. Admiral Carter watched the tactical display with growing alarm. The hegemony flagship was too large and too heavily armored for any human weapon to stop. If it reached Earth, the planet would be destroyed regardless of who won the overall battle. She made the hardest decision of her military career. Every available ship would attempt to intercept the alien flagship before it could complete its attack run. The human fleet would sacrifice itself to protect Earth. Captain Danny Rodriguez received his orders aboard the Defiance. His ship, along with 30 others, would make a direct assault on the Eternal Dominion. They had almost no chance of survival, but they might be able to slow the alien ship down long enough for evacuations to begin. Captain Amy Chen brought her stealth squadron out of hiding for one final attack. Her ships had been saving their most powerful weapons for exactly this situation. They would strike at the flagship's engines and try to cripple its advance. Engineer Tony Garcia charged the solar defense grid for one last massive energy burst. Every platform in the network would focus on the alien flagship simultaneously. The combined beam might be powerful enough to penetrate even hegemony heavy armor. Dr. Susan Mills pushed her artificial intelligence systems to their absolute limits. Every computer on Earth was linked together in a desperate attempt to calculate a solution. There had to be some way to stop the alien ship before it destroyed everything. The answer came from an unexpected source. Captain Chris Baker commanded the heavy cruiser ENS Resolution. His ship was old and slow compared to the newer vessels in the fleet, but it had one advantage that might make the difference. The Resolution had been designed as a ramming ship. In the early days of space warfare, humans had built vessels specifically to collide with enemy targets. The Resolution was the last ship of its type still in active service. Captain Baker made his decision without waiting for orders from Admiral Carter. The Resolution changed course and accelerated directly toward the alien flagship. His crew knew what he was planning and none of them objected. The collision would destroy both ships, but it might prevent the hegemony from completing their final attack. It was a small price to pay for the survival of Earth and the freedom of the galaxy. Captain Chris Baker stood on the bridge of the ENS Resolution and watched the alien flagship grow larger on his screen. The Eternal Dominion was so massive that it filled his entire view. In 30 seconds, his ship would collide with the enemy vessel at tremendous speed. His crew worked at their stations with calm efficiency. They had all volunteered to stay aboard when he announced his plan. Lieutenant Sarah Miller reported that the engines were at maximum power. Ensign Kevin Park confirmed that their course was locked on target. Warlord Zethkar detected the approaching human ship, but dismissed it as insignificant. One small vessel could not possibly threaten his massive flagship. His weapons officers prepared to destroy the Resolution with a single plasma burst. They never got the chance. Captain Baker had timed his approach perfectly. The Resolution struck the Eternal Dominion's forward section, just as the alien weapons were charging for their final bombardment of Earth. The collision vaporized both ships instantly. The explosion was visible from Earth as a brief new star that flared and then faded, but the sacrifice achieved its purpose. The hegemony flagship was gone and Earth was safe. Admiral Carter felt tears in her eyes as she watched the tactical display. The Resolution's sacrifice had saved the planet, but the war was far from over. Scattered alien ships were still fighting throughout the solar system. The battle continued for another 6 hours. Human ships hunted down the remaining hegemony vessels one by one. Some aliens surrendered when they realized their situation was hopeless. Others fought until their ships were destroyed. Captain Amy Chen's stealth squadron eliminated the last alien patrol near Jupiter. Her ships had taken damage, but they were still operational. The solar system was finally clear of enemy forces. The news from across the galaxy was even better. The rebellion that had started with Earth's resistance was spreading faster than anyone had imagined. 17 star systems were in full revolt against hegemony rule. Dr. Rachel Green coordinated communication with the rebel forces. Her team worked around the clock to translate messages from dozens of different species. Each one brought reports of victories against their former oppressors. The crystalline beings of Silicon Valley had captured the hegemony command center in their system. They were using alien computers to coordinate attacks against remaining loyal forces. The insectoid Hive Collective had overrun 3 planets in the Kepler system. Their swarm tactics were perfectly suited for fighting in the asteroid fields where hegemony ships could not maneuver. Effectively, most significantly, the survivors from Centauri had formed an alliance with rebels from 6 other systems. They called themselves the Liberation Fleet and were systematically destroying hegemony installations throughout their region of space. Commander Nathan Scott brought the ENS Explorer back to Earth with detailed reports of the galactic situation. The hegemony empire was collapsing faster than anyone had predicted. Some alien commanders were trying to maintain control, but most had simply abandoned their posts. President Nicole Barnes addressed the world from the White House. The immediate threat to Earth was over, but humanity faced new challenges. They were no longer alone in the galaxy, and they had responsibilities to the species they had helped liberate. Dr. Marcus Webb was appointed as Earth's first ambassador to liberated worlds. His job was to establish peaceful relations with the former hegemony territories and help them rebuild their devastated civilizations. The work was not easy. Some species had been enslaved for so long that they had forgotten how to govern themselves. Others were seeking revenge against their former oppressors and had to be convinced that peace was better than continued warfare. The Zephyrian species itself presented a unique challenge. Individual Zephyrians who had been freed from their empire's brutal conditioning proved to be intelligent and adaptable. Many of them became valuable allies in the rebuilding process. Captain Jennifer Cole was promoted to admiral and placed in command of the new Galactic Liberation Fleet. Her job was to hunt down remaining hegemony holdouts and protect the liberated worlds from any attempts at reconquest. Her first major operation was the siege of the hegemony capital world. The planet was defended by automated weapons systems and a small fleet of die-hard loyalists. The battle lasted 3 weeks, but ended with the capture of the last major hegemony stronghold. Engineer Tony Garcia led the effort to establish communication networks between the liberated systems. The hegemony had controlled all interstellar communications to prevent coordination between conquered species. Now those same networks were used to spread messages of freedom and cooperation. Dr. Susan Mills worked with representatives from dozens of species to create new artificial intelligence systems. These programs would help coordinate the massive effort needed to rebuild galactic civilization without central control. 5 years after the war, President Barnes traveled to the former hegemony capital for a historic ceremony. Representatives from 47 different species gathered to sign the Galactic Cooperation Treaty. The treaty established principles that would govern relations between all member worlds. No species would be forced to join the cooperation. No world would be required to change its internal government. Military force would only be used for defense against external threats. Captain Danny Rodriguez commanded the honor guard for the ceremony. His ship, the Defiance, had been rebuilt and now served as the flagship of the Galactic Cooperation Navy. The organization was small, but it represented something the galaxy had never seen. Before Dr. Patricia Lopez had become the galaxy's leading expert on peaceful technology transfer, her job was to help less advanced species develop their technology without repeating the mistakes that had led to the hegemony's rise to power. The former mining world of Pharaoh 6 had been transformed into a center of interstellar trade. Species that had never been allowed to communicate under hegemony rule now exchanged goods and ideas freely. The aquatic peoples of Oceanus 7 had developed new underwater cities that became tourist destinations for visitors from across the galaxy. Their unique architecture inspired artists and engineers from dozens of different worlds. Even the plant-based civilization on Garden World contributed to the new galactic community. Their biological expertise helped restore worlds that had been damaged by hegemony strip mining operations. Admiral Carter retired from active duty, but remained as an advisor to the Galactic Cooperation Council. She often spoke at military academies about the importance of unconventional thinking in warfare and diplomacy. The war had taught humanity valuable lessons about their place in the galaxy. They were not the strongest species or the most advanced, but they had something that the hegemony had never understood. They had the ability to inspire others to fight for freedom. 10 years after the liberation, Earth had become the unofficial capital of a new type of galactic civilization. Representatives from hundreds of worlds came to study human methods of government and military organization. But the most important legacy of the war was philosophical rather than political. The galaxy had learned that no species had the right to dominate others. True strength came not from the ability to conquer, but from the courage to resist those who would. The empire of conquerors had fallen not to a greater empire, but to the simple human conviction that freedom was worth any sacrifice. Earth stood victorious not as a new hegemon, but as proof that even the mightiest tyrant could be defeated by those who refused to kneel. In the end, humanity's greatest victory was showing the galaxy that there was a better way to live among the stars.